So there are a few major takeaways from the quote-unquote Faucileaks that we should be talking about. Now, the media's takeaway is Anthony Fauci is the greatest person that ever lived. Look how great he is. He's so amazing. He's also handsome, and he's smooth, and wow, wow, wow. Anthony Fauci, I wish he was my husband or my wife. Either way, gender isn't real. Now, that's the Washington Post takeaway. There's a sub-takeaway off of this of just how corrupt the mainstream media is, what they'll do for the narrative. Does truth even matter anymore to the democracy dies in the darkness crowd? We could talk about that. But there are two major areas in the Fauci leaks that bring up severe, not just credibility, but like criminality issues with Anthony Fauci. And it's going to be hard to prove criminality here. The one people might focus on is masks. Masks isn't that a big deal compared to the rest of it. Yes, we all hate wearing the mask. They became a big cultural flashpoint. Joe Biden will get will get 17 different vaccines and still be wearing 57 different masks. Wearing a mask is, and yes, that's all silliness, and that's not where the productive conversation is. So we're just going to throw the masks out for a while now. The two big things here are, one, the lab leak hypothesis, him having evidence for it and then denying such things, and two, the promulgation of the notion that asymptomatic spread was such a huge issue. So we'll start at the asymptomatic spread because this was the major justification for the lockdown. The major justification for the lockdown was the rate of asymptomatic spread, allegedly, which Anthony Fauci admits to basically saying asymptomatic spread is very rare and we don't really have evidence of it happening. Yet they push the notion that we have evidence of it happening as the reason for the lockdown. And it makes sense to sort of try the lockdowns, for a month. I've talked about Category A deaths, Category B deaths of COVID. Lockdowns is to reduce Category A. So by this, I mean Category A deaths in COVID are deaths caused by COVID. Category A death, you die of COVID-19, right? And Category B deaths are deaths caused by the measures we've taken to prevent Category A deaths. So, you can't get cancer screening because the hospitals are below capacity and we're canceling hospital stuff. So, asymptomatic spread was a reason why we needed lockdowns, and the major thing was they were going to decrease Category A deaths, because if people like me could go outside feeling healthy but still be vectors for this disease, well, that was the reason to lock down, because you never know who could be a disease vector. It wasn't like the original SARS where you get it, you feel pretty sick, and then the sick people are in the hospitals. You just kind of need to sort of, is much more self-contained there. This was the big reason for the lockdowns, is the asymptomatic spread. You had a disease that could spread very, very effectively, very, very quickly. So that was the justification to lock everything down. Now, it turns out that was not scientifically true. Anthony Fauci knew this. We all kind of knew this by the end of it. And yet we're still locked down today in Ontario. Ontario, we're still talking about more lockdowns because the myth cannot die. The myth of the lockdown just cannot die. There was no scientific backing for it when we did it. It was just, might as well try this. Everything we've looked into seems to see it's counterproductive or creates more Category B deaths. Yet there is no way to kill the lockdown. There is no way, because every politician is just being hectored by the establishment media forces into saying, oh, Doug Ford, you want to lift lockdowns? That means you're going to kill my grandmother, right? No matter how many vaccines or masks you wear, you got to be locked down. Okay. So that was the big thing, is the lie of asymptomatic spread to sort of destroy the economy. Now, that one, to play devil's advocate here, if you are sort of a hardcore Democrat, liberal, NDP person, you could say, okay, it's okay to lie to the people because they wanted to prevent the Category A deaths, right? Because every life is precious. Remember, this is different than the Democratic Party and the Liberals circa 2019, where there's too many people on the planet. Overpopulation is a problem. We just need less people somehow. This is the Democrats and Liberals of 2020, where every single life is precious, and we must protect all life at all costs at all times. So this lie was in order to prevent Category A deaths. I mean, these are the deaths we care about. We do not care about Category B deaths. We don't care about overdoses or people dying of cancer because they can't get cancer screening. Screw them. They're dead to us, right? But COVID-19 deaths, we care about those. Every life is precious, unless it's a life that we lose to save other lives, right? Because this is the morality of the common world. Okay, so the big crime from the religious Fauciites should be the other one, the denial of the lab leak hypothesis, because this is what leads to more Category A deaths. Now, sane people would be mad at the asymptomatic spread lie causing other Category B deaths, but let's look at it again just from the Democrat perspective. So this is something that should enrage everyone, and this is the absurdity that it's not being covered more just because Donald Trump bad, and Donald Trump put forward the lab leak hypothesis over a year ago. Turns out he was right. So what Fauci did was not he didn't have definitive evidence that it was, lab leak, but he was getting credible evidence from credible sources and acknowledging them, and then going and turning around to say that there is no evidence, that it is debunk, right? So it's not that he just said, hey, the evidence we're seeing is incredible right now, that's not where the evidence is pointing. Right? If he had just said a vague, right now the evidence does not point towards this, that's one thing. But he definitively went out there and said it was a debunked theory that now looks like it's the most likely one. This is criminal from everyone in society should find this a criminal act, because by denying the fact that it looked like it came out of a lab, right? We needed to be having conversations about gain-of-function research. We need to have conversations about funding Chinese gain-of-function research. We need to have a talk about what are the Chinese even allowed to do anyway, because they're clearly don't have the best interests of the world or even China in their hearts that this is the CCP. So by denying the origins of the virus, we severely inhibited our ability to fight said virus, right? Because if we know it's made in a lab versus, we know it came from nature, these different viruses would behave in a significantly different fashion. And this would greatly increase our ability to fight the virus. We might have been able to create a vaccine a few months earlier, right? We might have been able to find, better treatments. We might have been able to come up with, more reasonable measures to fight viruses that we knew how they'd behave, based on lab or natural causes. And it looks like we're dealing with the lab. And Fauci was praised by the Chinese government for shutting all of this down. So here's a case where he likely increased the level of Category A deaths, which are the only deaths that we care about as a society. And by we, I mean like the Toronto Star or the Washington Post. I don't mean people, because most people are not like that. But what the media declares to be the people. This is what I mean. So these are the two big things from the Fauci leaks. It's one, he lied us into the lockdowns, and it's fascinating that no matter how many lies or how many ascientific non-truths are being pushed, the lockdowns will never die. There is no accountability for anything the left did, as long as they can justify it as, I did it because Orange Man bad. And the other one is the lab leak hypothesis. He severely inhibited our ability as a society to fight the disease by denying its origins and what its evolutionary history had been. So Anthony Fauci should resign. There's no way Anthony Fauci can be seen as a credible figure anymore. Yet the insanity of our world it's like a cult, right? When the doomsday cult, when the flying saucer to take you to heaven doesn't come, it's actually in that moment where the cult then doubles down and becomes even more extreme. And this is the same thing with the cult of Fauci. It is very likely that we'll see the most strident pro-Fauci puff pieces coming out in the coming weeks. And you'll wonder why, and that's because this is how cults behave.